Hi everybody, Lindsay Wilson from Positive Performance and Mindset Coach Academy, and today I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is pregame nerves, because honestly, this is something that you can implement that makes an immediate impact, because you think of how many athletes are really struggling with pre-competition, the emotions associated with pre-competition, in particular nerves. I've seen it a lot. I've seen a lot of athletes really hold themselves back in a big way because they didn't know how to deal with them. And I know a lot of coaches feel like maybe they've figured it out on their own, but aren't sure how to teach it to their athletes. So today I'm going to talk about this. So the first thing is reframing nerves, because this is what happens most of the time. I saw some people just came on live. Say hi if you're on. What happens most of the time is athletes, I was a basketball player, so I always use a basketball example. Let's say I'm getting ready for a basketball game and I start feeling that fight or flight reaction. I feel like butterflies in my stomach, and I feel like, to the extreme, maybe I feel like I'm going to throw up, or I feel that sense of nervousness, right? Maybe I have to pee a million times, whatever it is, however my body reacts. I'm sweaty and I feel a little uncomfortable with that feeling. And if I am not prepared for that, what happens is I then start telling myself, oh, I'm not ready to play, because I haven't learned that nerves are a part of competition. And so I start telling myself must be telling myself that I am not prepared or I'm not ready. And so that starts a feedback loop that makes me more nervous. This is one of the biggest differences I see between elite athletes and not elite athletes. And it's this: elite athletes understand that nerves help their performance to some degree. Non-elite athletes believe that nerves hinder their performance. That's it in a nutshell. And so just understanding that nerves are a part of getting to your peak performance is golden. It changes people's complete outlook. So it stops that feedback loop of like, oh, SHIT, I must not be ready if I'm feeling nervous. And so what a lot of people do is they say, oh, I shouldn't be nervous. I shouldn't feel those butterflies. But really, that is the path to finding peak performance, because you will never hear an elite athlete say, I found my best performance in the Olympics, in the national championship game, or, in the championship game or whatever. I found my best performance and I wasn't nervous at all. You never hear that, right? Because elite athletes understand that nervousness is a part of getting yourself prepared. And in the Psychology of Competition and the Coach's Complete Mental Training Toolbox, we talk about this further with something called the inverted U theory. And basically what it says is that to find your peak performance, you have to be at a certain arousal level, a certain excitement level, a certain adrenaline level, whatever word you want to put in there, to find peak performance. And for you, for me, we all have a real close range of where we find our peak performance. Most people are not half asleep when they find their peak performance. So teaching your athletes, especially at a young age, that butterflies are not something to be squashed or something to be avoided. It is a part of finding your peak performance. Yes, we do not want them to go to the other side where they're throwing up. There are limits to how nervous you can get and still find peak performance, for sure. But for most athletes, having some nerves is actually going to help them play better. So this is the reframing that happens, is when you're talking about pre-competition, we talk about nervousness as excitement. We talk about it as a path to finding peak performance. And so we're teaching athletes that nervousness is not the sign that maybe they've been told that it means they're not ready or it's something to be avoided. It is a sign that their body is preparing for competition. Demetrius, hi. So that is an important message, because otherwise they feel that message, that reaction in their body, and they think, oh, SHIT, I shouldn't be feeling this, okay? So that's a really big difference between elite athletes and non-elite athletes, and something you should definitely try to address with your athletes, because they are probably not going to come to it naturally on their own, because society all tells us that nervousness is a bad thing, right? It's considered a bad emotion. But you'll think about it even in your own life. If you're going into a job interview, or maybe you're a performer, you're very likely going to have some nervous energy going into it. And can also be helpful, right? Because when we feel that nervous energy, as long as it's not too much, it helps us prepare, right? That nervous energy is the same reason that we go over a PowerPoint deck the night before until midnight, to make sure that it's right if we have a presentation. So this nervous energy is not something to avoid. It's not something bad. We do need to work on reframing it, especially for young athletes that don't have a lot of experience, because again, they get that message that they're nervous and they think, oh, I must not be ready. I need to fix this. I need to squash this. And they also think, well, no one else is feeling that, because no one can tell that other people have butterflies or they feel nervous or they feel sick to their stomach, okay? So reframing it for your athletes, especially on the younger side, can be a super powerful, very simple, but super powerful way for them to understand how to deal with nerves pre-competition. And one way you can do that also is by sharing your own experience with nerves. Okay, so reframing is the first step. The second tool that I want to talk about is a consistent routine. So what a lot of athletes do, I'll use the basketball example again, is they show up for their game and they wait to see how good they are that day, right? If I make my first couple shots, I feel like, whoa, I'm good today. The basket's huge. Or if I miss it, I think, oh no, it's going to be a long night. And I know you have these athletes because you feel it too. You're on the sideline as a coach and you're thinking, uh-oh, Lindsay's, okay, she missed her first couple shots. Well, we know how a lot of athletes wait to see how good they are that day. And really what we teach is consistent routines lead to consistent results. This also helps reduce nerves, because one of the things with competition is we don't know what's going to happen, right? So that's part of the nervous energy that we feel. Anytime we have things in front of us that are unexpected, our brain goes into fight or flight, right? And that's our survival mechanism. So we're on high alert so we can figure out how to deal with the situation. And we do that for games as well, right? We go into a game, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how the other team's going to play. We don't know how we're going to play. We don't know how the refs are going to ref, all these different factors. But what we can do is we can gain control over one thing, and that is our routines. And when we do that, it reduces our nerves. It has us trust in something specific, and it gives us that sort of comfort that something is the same. And so we go into how to create proper routines, and that's how one-on-one coaching often works too, or when we coach coaches how to help athletes come up with their own unique pre-competition or pre-race routine. It's really, really important. But then when they have that, they always have this thing that they go back to, and it reduces their nerves. The other thing that it does is once they figure out that they are feeling maybe overly nervous or maybe underly nervous, when you're talking about the nervous energy, then they have something that they can go to. So maybe they listen to, more intense music, or maybe they do some breathing or what have you. So they have a little bit of flexibility within that routine as well to sort of gauge where they are mentally and switch out some of those routines a little bit. They have some areas to tweak. But when they have that when they've reframed their nerves and then they have a consistent routine, they're going into competition feeling prepared. And that is really the mentality that we want athletes to go into. They cannot control everything. We cannot control everything. But going in with that mentality that I have done everything to prepare myself for this moment is really, really important. Because when they do that, then they're able to just play. Then they're able to just compete. Otherwise, they start thinking too much, right? And that's where the nervousness comes up, is they're like, I don't know if I'm doing this right or that right, or what's going to happen, and they're worried about the other team, and they're worried about the refs, and they're worried about you, and all these things are happening in their mind. How can you possibly play at your best when you have all these things going on? So reframing nerves, super duper duper important, because most athletes get that wrong. Again, the difference between elite athletes and non-elite athletes often is their perception of nervousness, right? Elite athletes understand that nervousness is a part of peak performance. Non-elite athletes believe that it's a hindrance to peak performance, okay? So switching that, helping them understand that. The second thing is those consistent routines. It doesn't have to be some long drawn out routine, but having something that they do. The other thing is making sure that routine truly is consistent, meaning that we are trying to get them into that mentality with the same things over and over again, regardless of who the competition is, regardless of how they're feeling, regardless of where the competition is. None of that other factors matter. It only matters that they do the same thing every single time, okay? So if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments about pre-race, pre-game routines, nerves, and how to help your athletes through it, I'd love your questions and comments. And if you have other athletes or coaching colleagues that you think would benefit from this video, feel free to share as well. Okay, thanks. Bye.